The show is brought to you by our generous patrons at patreon.com/FalloutLorecast.
Robots Radio presents the Fallout Lorecast.
Welcome to the Fallout Lorecast, a place for the Fallout community to come together to explore the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout.
Wastelanders, Vault Dwellers, Raiders. Hello. Welcome back to the Fallout Lorecast. So today's episode is another weird one. This is another episode where it's just me and you guys. So hopefully this is fun. If you liked the last one that I did by myself, then hopefully you will also enjoy this one. Today we're talking about another Nightkin. We're going to talk about Dog or God. Dog God. God Dog. However you want to put it. So this is a character from a DLC for Fallout New Vegas, right? So we've talked about some of the other Nightkin from Fallout New Vegas, and a lot of you were saying that you wanted to hear about this one, before we kind of close off this section of, this category for the podcast. So this is another one of the Master's Nightkin, or was one of the Master's Nightkin, right? And just like the other Nightkin that we've talked about, Dog or God, I guess both, they suffer from dissociative identity disorder. And this was caused by a combination of stealth boy abuse, unsurprisingly, as well as dealing with the loss of unity and the lack of purpose that comes with, losing your master, right? And so Dog really left his service, left his role pretty downtrodden and in a really dark place, right? So let's talk a little bit more about Dog and kind of where his headspace is at, because I think it's really interesting, and it's similar to what we were talking about with Davison and Antler, where having a lack of purpose alongside some sort of addiction can really just make things spiral out of control, right? And you see that here. You see a really interesting inner conflict, but we'll get to that in a second. First, let's talk a little bit more about Dog, about what Dog looks like. So similar to Lily Bowen, who we talked about before, Dog is shorter than the average super mutant. Of course, he is still a Nightkin, so he is still very large, very tall, definitely taller than humans, absolutely. And a funny little factoid is that, so when Dog, right, so Dog has dissociative identity disorder, which is just like we've talked about before. You see these multiple personalities, you see these alternate personalities in these Nightkin. Dog and God are the personalities that this Nightkin has, and Dog is the host, right? So that is who I guess you consider to be the original host of this body. Dog is what was created when this person was turned into a Nightkin. And when Dog is fronting, if you're talking about dissociative identity disorder, fronting is when a certain personality is taking charge, essentially, right? So they're the one talking, they're the one maneuvering around, and when they're up front, it means that sometimes the other ones, maybe they don't know what's happening at all, right? You can co-front, I think is what it's called, when you have more than one, kind of acting at the same time, or co-piloting. But so in this case, when Dog is fronting, Dog is 10% smaller than he is when God is fronting, which is pretty interesting. And like I said, in general, he is still a pretty small super mutant, but no less deadly, of course, right? He is a Nightkin. So yeah, pretty interesting. And as far as personality goes, Dog really is about as cut and dry as you can get when it comes to thinking of what a Nightkin might be like, or just a super mutant in general, right? This is a barbaric creature, humanoid, who just has an endless need to kill or maim and to torture. And this is most likely due to a combination of being turned into a Nightkin and the conditioning done when working under Unity. And this has left a lasting effect on him, because now that Dog is free, essentially to do anything that he wants, he continues to just want to slaughter and possibly eat anyone and anything he can. So it's pretty interesting. It makes me wonder, is it cannibalism if a super mutant eats a human? Right? If super mutants were originally human, I don't know. What do you think? So Dog and God they're interesting. They are kind of opposite ends. Two sides of a coin, if you will. They would like to have very different lifestyles, right? So Dog is just ruthless, whereas God is much calmer and doesn't want to just be torturing people and doing terrible things all the time. He wants to be calm and collected and thoughtful, which I'm sure you can imagine if you're a Nightkin and half of the time you are just, going around just wrecking everyone's days, and then you switch and suddenly you are kind and you feel guilty. Maybe it seems pretty crazy. It'd be really strange to encounter someone like that in real life. And I'm sure, honestly, maybe not even with dissociative identity disorder, because I know that any of you who are interested in psychology may be aware that multiple personality disorder, which is now considered to be dissociative identity disorder, is not always agreed upon in psychology as a real thing. And so despite plenty of evidence pointing to it being very much a real thing, there hasn't been a whole lot of research put into it yet. And we're starting to see a lot more. And of course, sometimes it takes time. Science just takes time, and it takes time for it to catch up with what becomes common knowledge. And so right now, most of our exposure to things like multiple personalities is through characters like this or villains in movies, which is not great because people out there exist like this. And even if you don't have multiple personalities, when I mentioned the idea of seeing someone who really flip-flops like this and can go from being just completely ruthless to feeling bad about it, right? And genuinely wishing that they could live some other way. And it's so interesting because I imagine you do encounter people like that in real life who maybe do terrible things and then feel just so burdened by it. And then maybe continue to do terrible things. And it just goes to show that humans are so much more complex than you could ever really even conceptualize. The duality of man, is so crazy. So that's essentially who this guy is. And when God is fronting, right, so God is the more calm one, he wants to believe that he is the host in Dog's body, right? Not Dog. Dog is not the one in charge. God wants to believe that he is the one calling the shots. He was there first, right? And unfortunately, this is not the case. But this is the role that God would like to have. He wants to be really the primary person living in this body. Unfortunately, God doesn't really like the body that he's in, this Nightkin body. And I think this is interesting because to me, this is a representation of probably the difficulty that comes with your human body being transformed into a non-human creature, a non-human killing machine, right? And if that part of your personality still comes back at all, and what's interesting about Nightkin, right, is that they are made to still have parts of their humanity left because they thought it would make them stronger. So if you have your humanity, coming out, your conscience coming out and trying to tell you that the things you're doing are bad, then I'm sure it's a representation of your pre-monstrous self, right? Having just a really hard time coping with a new life, with a new body. And so you see this with God. And the other thing that's interesting about God is that despite this discomfort and despite obviously not agreeing with Dog, God really wants to take care of Dog, and Dog hates this, right? So God essentially treats Dog as a younger sibling. He wants to be a caregiver. He wants to make sure that Dog is making good choices and protecting the body they share. And Dog, on the other hand, hates this, just absolutely despises it, since he sees God as an unfair authority figure that's keeping him from being himself and doing what he wants to do, which is killing people, essentially, right? And so it's definitely a pretty crazy little issue we got there. And the other interesting thing about having multiple personalities, and this isn't just in real life, but it is in real life, but also you see it with Dog and God here, that when one personality is fronting, I mentioned this before, that sometimes they can come up together and sometimes it'll have one in the front and others will be kind of in the back. It's the idea that they're living in your subconscious. And so they're still existing. So these personalities, they don't just go away. They don't just turn off when you're not living through them, essentially. They're still living, they're just not fronting, which is a really interesting concept and not at all what our podcast is about. But when it comes to Dog, the place that God goes when Dog is out, or the place that Dog goes when God is out, is referred to as the basement or the cage. And this is just a representation of his subconscious. This is where the personalities go when one of them is in charge, right? And what's interesting about being, existing in a subconscious is that you are not aware of what's going on around you, right? You are existing in a body that is making choices and doing things that are out of your control, and you might not even be aware that anything happened until you come to again, right? So until another personality starts hosting again, you might not even know that anything is wrong. And you see this with people in real life that have this disorder. Well, they will essentially feel as though they have blacked out for sometimes even days at a time. And they'll come to again in a completely different place than they last remember, in completely different clothing, a new hairstyle, right? Maybe they have completely changed to fit the image, the liking of whoever was fronting, and now you come back and you have no clue what's gone on and your whole life is different, right? So this is a real issue. And what's interesting with Dog and God is that they will use this to their advantage to keep secrets from each other. And so it's really easy to keep secrets if you don't have to worry about the other person essentially ever being conscious at the same time as you. And they can communicate with each other. So Dog and God do talk and argue and fight with each other, but most of the time you will get one or the other. So yeah, and like I mentioned, it can be useful to have secrets still. And in God's case, to be able to do things for the betterment of themselves as a unit, without Dog necessarily realizing that anything is changing or wrong, or that precautions are being made. But then it goes the other way as well, where Dog could do something particularly gruesome, and perhaps when God fronts again, he doesn't even realize what he's done, right? And it's very scary to not be aware of what you're doing. And you see this again in real life. So this is dissociative identity disorder, but there are other dissociative issues that you can have. This is usually a response to trauma, or other kinds of incongruence with yourself, where if you've ever, so this is a very simple and a very simple version of this, but if you've ever been just sitting, and how when you'll just if you're just waiting around, or maybe you're even listening to someone and all of a sudden you just zone out completely, and it's not like you're even really thinking about anything else, but suddenly you've just drifted away. And normally you can see it in people's eyes when they kind of do this. You ever have an awkward experience where you kind of zone out and then you come to realizing that you're looking directly at someone and they've noticed, right? It's pretty freaky. That is a very minor example of dissociation. Other examples are if you look at yourself in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, or if you look at your hands and you don't feel like they're really your, like, you know objectively that they are your hands, but right. And so imagine being a super mutant. Number one, imagine being a super mutant. But imagine being a super mutant that is just dealing with this constantly coming in and out of awareness. It just sounds so difficult to me. And the idea that any of these Nightkin dealing with that is really scary. But what's different in my opinion, what's different about Dog is that he doesn't really have anyone else. And it's part of his problem. And so you see with Davison, he has a whole group of other Nightkin with him. With Tabitha, she created essentially a cult following, right? But with Dog, he so desperately wants a sense of purpose again, wants another master, wants someone to work for and something to work towards, and also an ability. He wants the freedom, if you will, to do terrible things, and do it as much as he wants. And so it's a crazy time over in Dogland.
It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable, and I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/falloutlore.
This is the new Weight Watchers, built for real life and real results, no matter what mode you're in. Maddie went all in for her big day and lost 33 pounds. Emily lost 85 pounds and hit her goal while still living her life.
Weight Watchers gave me the tools and I feel amazing.
Join the millions of members and lose weight with the #1 doctor-recommended weight loss program. Lose more at WeightWatchers.com.
At 6 months, participants in a clinical trial of Weight Watchers program lost an average of 12 pounds.
Hello there, old chap. Good to see another of General Atomic's finest, still eager to serve.
Alrighty, I'm going to take a moment to do the middle of the show, and I've never done this before, so bear with me. I don't know actually what to say here, but I do know that I want to thank our patrons. You guys are amazing. Like, I truly am flabbergasted and just truly in shock that any of you appreciate the podcast enough to give even $1. Like, it honestly blows my mind, and there aren't enough words. There are not enough words in the English language. I'm gonna start learning other languages to express how much it blows my mind that any of you donate and are just so kind. Even those of you that listen and have been listening since before I've been on here, just the following that this has and the incredible people that I've gotten to meet through doing this podcast has truly changed my life. And so I just wanted to say thank you, because normally I don't do these little middle parts, but I feel the love. And I want to make sure that you guys do too, because we really, really, really do appreciate you.
If you have any questions about Nuka World, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Okie dokie. So, moving forward, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Dead Money DLC, right? I mentioned that this is all from a New Vegas DLC, and it is super cool. So what I'm going to try to do is not spoil too much of it, and for the most part, just talk about Dog, right? Or God, or both of them, and just kind of talk about their role in the situation and the different outcomes that can happen in relation to Dog as a character, right? So I'm not going to be talking about Dead Money as a whole. If you want that, we can do that in the future. I'm not sure if it's been done before, but I don't want to spoil all of it because it is really cool. And I can 100% put my stamp of approval on it because I played it the other day. Very exciting. So, if you haven't played it yet and you are interested in playing it, this is your sign to go play it. And also, you're welcome that I'm not spoiling everything. But on the other side of all of this, Dead Money is the name of it. This game has been out for a good long while now, and so in terms of information regarding Dog, I'm not really holding back. But you know, it's a lore podcast. There's going to be spoilers, I suppose. So let's talk about Dog. Let's talk about meeting Dog. So when you first meet him, he is locked inside of a cell in a police station, and you're there because you want to recruit him for Father Elijah. And Elijah is a former Brotherhood of Steel elder who wants to destroy the NCR. And Elijah hears about the abandoned Sierra Madre Resort, which is a resort that never had a proper opening. It was supposed to be this just beautiful, amazing resort that everyone would want to go to, you know, the vacation spot in the area. Brand new, fantastic, and unfortunately the bombs drop, and many people were there. It never had a proper opening because it didn't get to stay open, but there were people who, I'm not sure if it was for a grand opening party, or because I know that's a theme of a lot of them. I'm not sure if they got stuck during a grand opening party or if these were people that worked there, but when the bombs dropped, the resort locked itself down, right? And that meant that it locked a lot of people inside, people that were visiting, I think, for the opening. And this is dangerous. Many of them died, unfortunately, many at the hands of each other. And, you know, just struggling to survive makes you do crazy things. And years after the bomb drop, but not long enough after that, people weren't still trying to live in this area, or people weren't still stuck in the resort, because people were certainly still surviving inside of the resort. The Sierra Madre began spewing this red toxic gas, which just killed everyone, killed anyone attempting to survive that didn't have access to protection. And so the only people left in this area are what I refer to as ghost people. And these are people who live in the toxic gas. They live in the cloud, as it is referred to. This red cloud. And they live in hazmat suits, and they are considered to be very dangerous and are known for kidnapping people that try to walk through and around the resort. So this is a very dangerous place, but the appeal is that because it never really opened, and because it locked down when the bombs dropped, it is essentially, despite people trying to survive in it and the toxic gas, other than those two things, it is essentially brand new. And so it's like a time capsule, right, of pre-war life, or what the height of pre-war life it was supposed to be, right? This is a beautiful resort. And so rumors of the Sierra Madre being home to plenty of pre-war supplies, resources, furniture, and other treasures, who knows what, had spread across the wasteland, and it wasn't uncommon to hear people bragging about knowing a way in or having maps and using it as leverage to get food or shelter from curious adventurers. It's pretty common in the Mojave, apparently, that you could go and stumble across someone in a bar, and they might try to convince you to help them out in exchange for information on the Sierra Madre. And the idea here is that there's a vault, right, at the Sierra Madre where all the goodies are hidden. And Elijah, that I mentioned before, hears about all these rumors and wants to break in because he wants to find what is in this vault. He wants to put the rumors to rest. He wants to know what is in there, what is so fantastic that legends have been told about this resort, right? So in order to get inside, he's going to need a team. He's not going to be able to do it by himself, and this is where you come in. You have been asked to, if you'd like to help him, you can go and confront, I believe, 3 other people. One of those is Dog, and you want these people to help you out. And so in order to convince Dog, you have to go visit him. And like I mentioned, he is locked in a cell in a police station. And when you give the proposal to Dog, this is honestly right up his alley, right? Dog has always wanted to have someone to believe in and to work for, and losing the master in his past is what drove him further into his mental illness. And that makes him, all the more eager to violently cling to a new master. And so if you know anything about Dog going into this, for example, if you've listened to a podcast episode for a podcast that talks about Fallout lore, and they've mentioned something like this, which is totally something that podcasts that talk about Fallout lore would talk about. This is getting really meta. If you know anything about Dog already, when you're going into this, you would know his history, I suppose. Perhaps. But if your first introduction to Dog is meeting him in this cell, then you really don't know if he wants to help you out or not, but you do know that you're gonna try your hardest to convince him. So you're provided with 2 holotapes, and one is instructions from Elijah, and this is used to get Dog to front. If you would like God to front instead, then you have to play a recording of himself telling Dog to get back in the cage. And so you can choose whether you want to talk to Dog or God. And obviously, given his personality, Dog is of the most use to Elijah, since he's fiercely loyal and happy to accept any challenge as long as the reward is worth it in his eyes, right? Particularly if he's asked to do something gruesome. God, on the other hand, doesn't want to help Elijah at all and would much rather escape and to be free. And so you get to decide if you even want to put him through this or not, right? Based on your gameplay. It's crazy how many more decisions go into these quests than just dialogue options, because at any point you could be playing a quest and come across something like this. And if you know enough information about it, you know that there isn't necessarily one good answer. And that's enough, I think, to make some people put the controller down. I've heard stories of people. I mean, we talked about it in our like moral dilemmas Patreon episode, where every once in a while you confront an issue in these games that you just really, you've realized that you don't know where you stand or what the right thing to do is. And for me, you meet this character, and especially, knowing all the things that I know now about him, it just feels tragic in the same way that all the other Nightkin do as well. They just all feel so tragic to me. So you can choose whether you want to engage with all this, but if you get Dog out and able to help Elijah again, then you're able to take steps towards locating the vault, right? But Elijah is essentially toying with you all. Because he's completely using you and these 3 people, which includes Dog, that you are have been tasked to recruit for his own benefit, right? So Elijah just needs you to do the dirty work, and that involves being attacked by scary hazmat ghost people in a giant red cloud, and involves you having to try and negotiate things with a very mentally disordered super mutant. So it's not really the greatest situation, and so you can decide throughout Dead Money if you want to actually help Elijah or not. There are many opportunities to get the other recruits that you're working with to side with you more than him. You can also kill them if you would like to. There's lots of possibilities there. But I will let you discover that for yourself, or we can talk about it on Discord or whatever. But what we're going to talk about right now is that Dog or God are in this scenario where they're helping Elijah, and Dog is fiercely loyal, right? And you have to figure out how to get past him to do a little something called fixing 3 gas valves. And this is very important because obviously one of the major problems here is gas. And so you have to get through and fix the valves. And one valve is pretty accessible, but 2 of them are in the path that Dog is guarding. And if Dog sees you, he will be very upset. And so when you walk in, the first thing you're going to hear is a very, very distraught Dog arguing with God, right? So it sounds like they're arguing with themselves, I suppose. And you get to sneak in. And there's a few ways this can work. You know, as always, there's a few different options for handling different characters. And in this case, if you have made it to this point, then you've probably either allied or killed the other 2 other people that you've been working with, which leaves Dog left, and he's the only one left to deal with. And there's a few things you can do. One of them is, well, if you can't figure out how to communicate with him well, which can be difficult seeing as he freaks out if he sees you, then you can just kill him, right? If you're afraid of him attacking on sight and you don't know how to handle the situation, then that is always an option, is just killing him. But in this case, you kill Dog and God. You know, he is gone. The entirety of this being as a unit is dead. That is what happens when you heal people. Some of the other options here are you can use the holotape of God talking to Dog, telling Dog to stand down, to convince Dog to back down. And this will allow you to talk to God, who can speak to you calmly and won't just aggro immediately. Alternatively, you can stealthily approach, and if you're lucky, you can sneak your way up and then stand up and talk to them. But it is difficult, because if he sees you, right, and you aren't sneaky and gentle, then he freaks out. And so alternatively to killing him, you can also just leave him be. If you are able to just completely disregard him and get around him, you can decide to just leave him as he is, and then he continues his life dealing with being both Dog and God, and who knows what else as time goes on. I imagine that, like other Nightkin, it might get worse. If you play your cards right, and if you have pretty good speech, I believe, then you can convince him to live his life purely as Dog or God. And this is honestly the craziest part of this decision to me, right? Because this gets past all the other options of killing versus just being sneaky versus whatever. In this case, this is a lot like when we talked about Lily Bowen and we were deciding, you know, which personality does she keep and why. It's exactly like that, because if you let him exist as Dog, he will go on an endless rampage against the Wasteland and is rumored to completely wipe small communities off the map. Alternatively, you can just keep God around, and he will be very thankful for it. He'll be very happy that you helped him, and he'll talk about how you saved him, and he'll go out into the world traveling around looking for other like-minded, more agreeable super mutants to live around, which I think is just clearly the nicest option here. Definitely the sweetest one, definitely the one with the most benefits for Dog, I believe, because it's going to keep him safe and happier and healthier and probably less angry, right? It'll keep other people safe. And after you do all of this, you have to go and deal with Elijah. But it's pretty interesting. And if you, in these scenarios where you choose Dog or God, in both cases, he will leave, right? And he either goes out to destroy the world or goes out to discover the world. And I just think that's really cool. So he's a really, really, really neat character, and I'm glad that we got to talk about him a little bit. Let us know if you want us to do one that is about Dead Money as a whole. I guess I'm sure this would make more sense if it was a little bit more in depth, but alas, that is Dog God. And of course, I do my best with these episodes, and sometimes it's a little different if I'm doing it completely alone like this, because sometimes I type things wrong, right? Or I'm looking at too many resources and then I mix up, what I'm talking about. Sometimes I get something incorrect. It happens. We all know that it happens occasionally. I do my best. But usually there's an added benefit of bouncing off of robots or bouncing off of the live chat, and people correcting as it goes, or like reminding me of things, right? Because I take these notes, but of course some things I'm like, oh, I'll just remember, and then I forget. So if there's anything about this episode that is incorrect, honestly, please call me out. But alternatively, if everything is fine and you think that this has been a fun, dandy, amazing episode, feel free to leave a review. Feel free to hang out on the Discord with us and talk to us. Talk about your favorite experience with Nightkin or your favorite DLC for the Fallout games. Whatever you want to talk about, we are happy to talk about with you. I really appreciate you guys. I know this is a weird outro, but I just wanted to let you know that I think you're amazing, and I hope you have a fantastic day. And whether you're listening to this on your commute or before you go to bed or while you're playing Fallout, I hope that it is bringing joy to your life because you deserve it. All right, I'm gonna let you go. Have a wonderful day, you guys. Bye.
To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Also, look up the Robots Radio YouTube for videos about Fallout and other things. And check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/robotsradio.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.